the Huab River, just north of the Peters Pool. We've just got a call in from Dr. Flapstander. We've been tracking for the past 48 hours. We've been tracking 2 lionesses, and he gave us a call in. And then we're moving through to go and recollar them, take some data that we need, and then fit them with a satellite collar, because they have just been with the VHF collars for the past couple of months. So we just want to get out there and get to experience all of that.
So we started about a week ago, I guess, and our first mission was to try and locate the Obab lionesses. And we met in the Huab River. So what had transpired there is that we already started picking up the tracks of these 2 lionesses, and then essentially we followed them for like 3 days before we picked up the radio telemetry signal. And I mean, you were very much part of assisting and helping finding the tracks in the Huab, which was complicated by the bad winds. I mean, we had some really significant east winds that destroyed tracks and cleaned the area. So it was quite hard work. And with the fact that the lions were moving incredible distances, you know, every day. So in the end, we picked up the radio signal and the lions towards the end of, I think it was the 3rd day. So it was only the 4th day that we managed to actually get a hold of them down in the reeds in the Huab, which was quite tricky, you know, to try and get them out of there. And it worked quite well in the end. That you know, with the permission from the Ministry of Environment, we were able to get a springbok carcass to lure them out, and then I used sound playbacks of a distress call of an oryx, which basically attracted them, and they came out of the reeds, and I think we got some beautiful footage of them coming out and walking across those sort of rocky plains and ridges, and until they eventually came to the carcass. Yeah.
Tell us a little bit more about the darting and then the recolling, the type of drug that you use, so that our viewers can get to understand more about how we go about that.
Yeah. Look, fitting radio collars and satellite collars to lions is one of the most important elements of the project, because that's essentially how we can follow them. The collars all have GPS units in them that record their position every hour during the day. So that's really important information, and us understanding the movement patterns, how they utilize the habitat, and also, especially when it comes to human-wildlife conflict, that knowledge of understanding their ecological characteristic of where they move and how they utilize the habitat is essential for us in trying to curb and manage conflict. So yeah, that fitting collars is really an important thing, but it's quite a difficult job, given that you know, the lions move over such enormous areas, and the terrain is rugged. You know, you saw how we had to travel, you know, over mountains and plains and dunes and, you know, marshes even. Yeah. So it's a dynamic area, and finding the lions and getting to them is often a very tricky business, you know. Yeah. So it took us 4 days to eventually end up with the lionesses, and then you know, darting them and fitting the collars is, you know, an equally complex problem, because you know, we have to essentially most of the time attract them out of an area that's inaccessible, and then immobilizing them, that puts them at risk. You know, every darting is always a real concern for me, because you know, mortalities do happen. I've been very fortunate that I've not lost a lion during darting session, but one can never be too relaxed about that. So yeah, I think we were very fortunate in that we managed to get them just after dark, and it was quite a nice, peaceful and relaxing type of immobilization. Not a lot of stress to the animals, and they woke up really quite beautifully, quite smoothly. You know, we could see that in the video material of the two of them sort of exploring the area where they were darted, and you know, from the video material, one can really see that they're very relaxed, and that's sort of what we aim for, and I think we were lucky in achieving that.
So in terms of the baiting setup that we did that day, what were the factors that was contributing to it becoming a very successful outcome of
Look, there we had to consider a lot of the sort of environmental issues and conditions. So there was, during the day there was a strong east wind blowing, but the previous day and the day before that, in the late afternoon, the wind turned, and we sort of had to anticipate that and hope that would happen. So the whole setup was done on the western side, allowing for the wind now to switch and carry the scent of the bait towards them, and that was then supplemented by a sound playback. Yes. I have a lot of recordings that I make all the time of lions, and I have a whole array of recordings that I would select, and then I would play this back at quite loud volume, but a really good sound quality. So the speaker reproduces the sound quite accurately, and that essentially fools, you know, the lions. But one has to be quite careful with that, because you know they're intelligent animals, and you fool them once but not the second time. That process of attracting them to us was very successful. You know, they came out of the thickets, and we selected the spot for the darting quite carefully, in the sense that once the lions are immobilized, they can't now move into an inaccessible area like thick reeds or mountains or, you know, rocky bits. And as we saw, it was really quite beautiful. They fell asleep right there, right next to each other. And you know, just by looking at the body language of the sleeping lions, you can tell that you know they were calm. It wasn't a stressful situation, so that worked out very well.
How important is it to keep on the monitoring how they wake up, and then the next 24 or 48 hours, how does that
Look, you're right, that is a very important element, because you know we put the lions, animals under risk by immobilizing them, and then it becomes really our responsibility to make sure that no harm comes their way, and that they can recover fully from that ordeal, and we have to ensure that that sort of security with them. Now, with the type of drugs we use, it's a combination of you know, a hallucinogenic that is supplemented with a very strong sedative. So as a result, because of the hallucinogenic elements, the animals can go into convulsions, and they can freak out by disturbance. So a big effort is always made to keep the disturbance as little as possible during an immobilization when the lions are asleep. Their eyes are open, so they are subject to all kinds of stimuli, and we have to keep that stimulus to the absolute minimum, which is why we were so quiet around the lion, and we didn't talk loudly, and we just, you know, limited the possible disturbance. And then working with them relatively quickly, within an hour, we can do all the necessary work we do. We fit the radio collars, we collect some biological information, measurements, age them based on the extent of wear on their teeth. And then it's basically time to wake them up. And that's done with an antidote. That's not a specific antidote, it just reduces the recovery time quite significantly. But in that time, they can be subject to no disturbance at all, which is sort of why everybody leaves. And then I monitor them in total darkness with the aid of night vision, infrared and thermal image cameras.
Yeah. The 2 lionesses are from the Obab area, right?
Yeah, correct.
But the area in which we found them, we located them, is almost a couple of kilometers away from their natural area where they are. So once you have collected the data from the telemetry, from the collars and so on, how was their movement and what could be the factors that contributes to them moving so far out of the area which they normally stay in?
You're very right. That is such an interesting aspect of the ecology of desert adapted lions. So, all the prides or the little groups will have a name associated to them, which is, sort of related to an area. Mm-hmm. So the Obab lionesses are named after the Obab river, and when they were younger, that's the area that they lived in. But subsequently, over the years, they've expanded their home range quite significantly, and that is true from every group of lions, every pride of lions in this northern Namib desert habitat. And that is a functional mechanism of them surviving in this habitat. So over time, if we monitor the groups of lions for long enough, which this project has been really fortunate in doing, so we have records of lions that go over 20 years. They live that long. So, and in that time, it's incredible how they move. They change their home range areas. They will eventually probably go back to become the Obab lionesses. But at the moment, there is no food in Obab. So hence there are no lions there. And what has happened is they've essentially migrated into the Huab prides area. And somehow the Huab and the Obab females are finding a way to live there together. Not at the same time, but the area is big enough that they're never at the same place at the same time, but they have to be able to adapt in that way to access food and get the prey animals. So that's very important for us to understand the extent of that movement and how it varies. And that's why fitting of the radio collars and collecting the data and analyzing and understanding where they move is so key to our understanding of the population. And then the next step is the effective management of the desert lions.
Jason, what's your view? How did you have the experience?
Well, we as a team just had the amazing privilege to join Dr. Flukstander as he recollared the 2 lionesses that he's been searching for months. And to see him at work and his team with the Lion Rangers and the Rapid Response Unit, it's a well-oiled machine, and to see those lionesses in the condition, as you mentioned, of how amazingly pristine they are looking through these tough times, really gives us hope for the lion population out here in Namibia.
The lions generally at night are fearless. That's their time. It's a time that they rule. But what was amazing last night is that the behavior of the lions were completely different. They had clearly been exposed to some really traumatic event related to human-wildlife conflict, I do believe. Most of the conflict that happens between people and lions, it's all in the daytime. You know, that's when people, you know, would shoot lions or try and you know, deter them from the area. So working with lions at night is always, you know, it's basically our trump card. But the two lionesses, their behavior was really extraordinary. They were very, very nervous of the vehicle. And there was no sound coming from the vehicle, there were no lights coming from the vehicle, but they were so suspicious of it, more so than in the daytime. So I do think that they had been harassed at night. It's the only explanation for that. Now, the one lioness had two large cubs that had suddenly disappeared in a time that there was quite a lot of cattle in the river. So I do think that the cattle owners, in protection of the cattle obviously, you know, shot probably those two cubs from a vehicle at night with a light, which by the way is illegal. But I think that really caused the behavior of the lions to be so severe. But every now and then this thing flares up because people are angry. You know, it's like, you know, the livestock conflict, human-wildlife thing. There's a huge element that's really not for this, and people feel that, you know, the government and us collectively, you know, are protecting wildlife at the cost of the people, particularly lions. And then this thing flares up because then they don't get the benefits. You know, all this money gets paid from you know, the tourism industry and the concessions, and then but the people on the ground feel that they're not getting the benefits. You know, and okay, one can tease that apart as to, you know, the causes and so on. But the fact of the matter is that is the reality, and tensions flare up, and people feel they just take law into their own hands and sort this problem out once and for all. And that happens every now and then. And maybe that is something that's the case now. You know, we've had a severe drought. I mean, look at the impact of you know, COVID-19 on the population. So people are not in a good space. And now you have lions that are harassing and killing the few head of livestock in a time when income is a serious problem. And then there's no, they just say, let's go and sort this out. So a car driving down the Huab looking for these girls because they've just come from a hell of a escapade up in the Sesfontein Dusty Plains area, which is sort of why I think they're so particularly nervous now. Maybe they ran into some problems. They certainly made some kills in places that looked very dodgy, and they hang around there for a day or two. We didn't hear any complaints, but you know, people don't always take the time to lay a complaint, and you know, maybe they try to shoot them or so, and they didn't manage, because these girls are clever now. So the cubs will be shot first, but now they're too small still. You know, so I do think there's a lot of problems that could you know, be prevalent in this time.
a little incident that happened a while ago in Anapep Conservancy, where a female lion that had three cubs was shot down as a result of human-wildlife conflict. It came into villages, into one village where it killed around 8 goats, and in another one where it killed 6 donkeys. But at one incident, we were with one of the farmers who lost his donkey to this particular lion. And this farmer went with us in the field, and then he saw exactly what was happening in the field. We could not see even a springbok, even anything that would say is a prey or should be a prey to lions. So, his mind eventually changed that, okay, but I'm putting all the blame on the lion. The lion came to hunt on my thing, but this was definitely out of desperation. It was not like this is what the lion wanted. I think for farmers to getting to understand that for us is a good achievement, and that's what we would want all the farmers to, the behavior to look like. Because sometimes it's basically mostly desperation than really just going to hunt the easy prey, which is the livestock.
This year, 2020, and in fact it goes back to the end of 2019, when we really had very poor rainfall, still way within the norms of an arid area. But it's been a build-up of several years of sort of lowish rainfall. On top of that, the impact that the low rainfall has had on the local communities that farm with livestock has been severe. And as a result, the communities have had to start utilizing areas that are generally designated for wildlife. So moved in there with their livestock. Vast numbers of livestock that then essentially obliterated the available grazing. So when the cattle moved out with a bit of rain that fell, it left the area for wildlife very much depleted from resources, food and grazing, browsing. And as a result, the lions have suffered, and the rest of the wildlife as well. So halfway into year 2020, we sit with a very difficult situation where there's really very, very little prey available in the area, and vegetation is also in a poor state.
I'm going to go back quite a few years. We're now having I think we're going into our 8th year of drought. And about 4 years into this drought, we realized that prey species numbers were starting to go down. So we're talking a good 4 years ago. We're talking 2014, 2015, 2016. We could pick that up already. Prey species are going down. Because of the drought at that time, you tend to have a double whammy. It's not just mortality, animals dying because there's no food for them, but they actually, because there's not sufficient nutrition, they don't reproduce. I mean, you get that in farming as well. If you don't give enough nutrients, the animals don't reproduce. So, of course, as prey species numbers went down, your normal population dynamics, which most people are aware of, numbers increase of prey species, a delay, and then your predator numbers also increase, and the same happens when their numbers go down. So your prey species numbers start going down on the graph in number, and there's a delay in time, and then your predator numbers go down because their food is now declining as well. Okay. So that's the basics. So yeah, we realize that we're facing massive challenges here. And on top of it, lions causing increasing amount of problems with farmers, etc. And yeah, something had to be done. But it's a massive area, and we just struggle to cover all these areas.
The distance for us, it looks like maybe 200 kilometers between two hotspots is not that much. But for us, it's a big challenge because of the roads and the terrains. Basically, when you drive, on average, you'll be driving between 4 and 6 hours for 200 kilometers. So for us, it's quite a big challenge.
We've been pivotal in implementing and erecting and helping with the early warning system. An incredible system which we could talk about for hours later on its own, because it's is really high tech. It's groundbreaking stuff. It's very exciting. But just in terms of the response, guys, we don't have enough people to respond to these things in time. And you know, if you get a call out from down in the Huab River, we've got somebody who's up near Sesfontein or even a Pua, by the time they get down there, damage is done. The team, the response team, their actual title is Human Wildlife Support Team. So that is not just about lions, okay? This is about human-wildlife conflict all over. So we are talking also about elephants. And of course, we know in parts of the Kunene areas, but particularly the eastern Kunene highlands, we've got a dramatic increase in elephants. And so that is also part of our responsibility that we have to take part. We have the most incredible resources in this area. I think there's a global responsibility towards the resources we have. We have some massive challenges. I think we're on the upbeat side of it. I really think we're making a difference. We just need some help.